Hey everyone, welcome to the Food Tech Mondays. So this is going to be our second edition of a Food Tech Mondays, as with me today, Ivan Draganov from Deal Room, and myself, Semi Hakim from Cook Project. Before we go in, which is today's topic is also quite exciting, as I wanted to talk about quickly what is Food Tech Mondays actually, and why are we talking about this? So basically, Food Tech Mondays, in short, is a webinar series as Ivan and myself are doing to focus on what are the exciting stuff and what are the interesting things that are happening within the food tech ecosystem globally. But it's also heavily based on community demand on what are the topics we should talk about, what are the interesting things, and also the amazing people who are the solution builders, which are the startups. And also we talk about the investment, and we give you like loads and loads of data, so it's quite fun for us. I believe it's quite fun for you too in a way. So without further ado, I would love to pass the mic to you, Ivan. And actually, before we go into that, let me just quickly plug in just 2 seconds of thing. So this video, you're probably watching it in the Cook Project's YouTube channel, and as Cook Project, we are a startup accelerator and a corporate innovation partner that works mainly in the emerging markets. So we work together with corporates, governmental organizations, and investment funds, working together with agri-food startups, food, agriculture, and water, and also a bit in energy, to basically help the solution builders who are working for the future of food systems. So that's what is Cook Project, and you can check out our website on cookproject.com. And if you have any further questions, you can just reach us out anytime you want. So this is our second session of Food Tech Monday. So welcome back. So Ivan, floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Ivan Draganov. I'm leading food tech in investments at Deal Room, which is a startup and database, and we track this investment, corporates, key investors, and basically all the data you need to figure out who are the promising startups, who is investing where, and what are the up and coming trends. And for today's session, as the community has chosen, I'm going to focus a little bit on food waste and tech-enabled solutions that are helping us to combat food waste. I'll just share my screen now. Let me see. So this is the presentation. Is it visible now?
It is, man. Yeah, it's now perfect actually. Yeah, it's coming.
All right, so yeah, as I said, today I'm going to be talking about tech-enabled solutions that are helping us combat food waste. The value of the global food tech ecosystem has ballooned to 1.2 trillion, and it increased 6x since 2016. However, if we look actually more closely, we can see that most of the value so far has been driven by delivery and logistics companies. However, the rest of the ecosystem has been growing faster. So since 2018, the rest of the food tech ecosystem grew 6.7x to 474 billion. But still, that's a little bit more than half of the value of food delivery and logistics startups. And the rest of the ecosystem actually is also catching up quickly when it comes to the number of unicorns. So since 2016, when there were just 3 unicorns in the rest of the food tech ecosystem, now there are 50, or 16.6 times more. Whereas in food, the number of food delivery and logistics unicorns went from 19 to 61. There is still some catching up to do. The good news is that as food delivery matures, the VC investment in the rest of the ecosystem has been increasing. And in 2016 to 2018-19, actually food delivery was more than 50% of this investment, but this trend started to reverse last year and this year. And we can see that actually the rest of the food tech ecosystem reached 23 billion of investment this year versus 17 in food delivery. And the rest of the ecosystem basically includes companies that are working on alternative protein, on farm management and automation, robotics, but also on food waste, which is the topic at hand today. And developing countries are bearing a disproportionate cost of climate change. And why I'm mentioning that is because agriculture is contributing a large chunk of CO2 emissions, and at the same time, climate is impacting agriculture and vice versa. However, if we look more closely, countries with high risk of climate change have attracted actually less venture capital money to make food and agriculture resilient and sustainable. And for example, countries like United States, United Kingdom have attracted many times more capital compared to the whole of Africa and Latin America, which, if you refer to the previous graph, are two regions with high cost of climate change. And food waste actually plays a big role in that. So I've taken this graph from an environmental and protection agency in the US. They published a report, and what we can see here is that primary production accounts for the most CO2 emissions, as it involves land, fertilizers, and pesticides. However, even along the way of the supply chain, we still see that, like in distribution and processing, it contributes to 26% of the CO2 emissions, etc. And why is that relevant? Well, if we look at food waste, we can see that the most food is being wasted at the end of the supply chain, but the environmental impact is additive, which means that if you waste like a piece of bread, you have to take into account all the emissions along the supply chain. So you must consider what the impact of the farmer, the impact of then the distributor who bought the grain, and then you move it to the manufacturer, and then the transportation and everything. So this means we need to address food waste across the entire value chain, but it's also extremely important we make sure that we reduce it at the final stage, consumption. And as a third of the food is being wasted, so all the calories that we produce, a third of them is being wasted. This is resulting in a massive economic loss, roughly 2.6 trillion each year. And this food that is being wasted is enough to feed actually the 815 million hungry people around the world. So let's look at solutions of food waste. So this investment in food waste solutions reached an all-time high this year of 958 million. But although this has like the total of this investment has increased 5x since 2015, still if we look at in proportion to the entire food tech investment, it still accounts for a tiny 2.5%. And then tech-enabled solutions to reduce food waste have received actually the most investment, followed by recycling and distribution. So companies working on ways to reduce food waste across the entire value chain have received almost $1 billion all time. This is all-time investment, followed by recycling with 563 million. And lastly, companies that help to redistribute soon to expire foods have received 557 million. Let's look across the entire value chain, as they're really promising companies. So, for example, in primary production, there are companies like Green Crop Technologies, which are basically helping to preserve crops post-harvesting. And there is AgroSustain that is also is helping to save crops post and after pre and post harvesting. Basically, those companies have technology to kill moths and make sure that food stays fresh as it's being transported along the supply chain. But also companies like Zoomagri and Strela Biotechnology are using sensors and AI to determine when food is going to go bad. So in the case of Zoomagri, they can monitor soybeans, greens, and other crops and determine when those are about to go bad. So then that can be managed accordingly. And Sterlet Technology is detecting, because before food goes bad, it emits a gas. So Sterlet Biotechnology is able to detect that and use AI to basically indicate when fruits are about to mature and go bad. But also when in the retail stage, there are companies like Imperfect Foods, which are helping foods that don't look good or are soon to expire to actually be bought by consumers. So it's similar to buying your groceries, but you're buying, let's say, fruits that would look too ugly to display at the store, which, by the way, is really a thing, or are soon to expire. But also there are exciting solutions like Wino, which are using different sensors and AI to determine how to run a commercial kitchen in a way that you reduce food waste, and also helps the staff get educated. Okay, we are wasting the most food at this stage, so maybe we should do something about it. And there are companies like Chef Engine, which are determining, based on the sales of the store, determining should you produce 5 sandwiches of this type or 10, so that basically you're selling as many you're producing, so food doesn't go to waste. And there are also exciting companies on the consumption side, like Olio, which is connecting neighbors and helping them sell food that would otherwise expire. But if you're not willing to sell these foods, there are companies like Plant Jammer, which basically you can put all the ingredients, everything you have in the fridge, and can give you fun recipes to cook, and basically it helps you empty your fridge before food goes bad. Or companies like Kitcha, where you can just take a picture of your of what you bought, of the receipt of what you bought, and helps you keep track of the food you have, so that you're not buying too much of one thing and then throwing it away. So really exciting solutions across the whole value chain. Oh, and there is Whole Surplus. It's a company that works entire the whole value chain. I think it's Turkish, and maybe you know more about
It is,
them.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's when I saw their logo, I was actually quite excited to see it. So basically, yeah, as you mentioned, they are quite, involve almost all of the, not almost, I think that's all of the, the food value chain, and they work on creating more efficient, food systems from top to bottom, from production to the consumption side. They do, come up with also, developing new services. They're also moving towards the hardware as well. I really actually find that really interesting. Like, for example, you mentioned the consumption side, right? So they have this new service. It's called Fazla. It basically means, surplus, actually. What they do is that they do the similar things. So if there's like restaurants and cafes, they have like a surplus food that, they work on preventing going to the waste. But they're not doing just the sake of, for certain products you can buy it, etc. But they actually develop, boxes to send out to people. So you actually purchasing something from that restaurant or cafe, but you don't know actually what you're going to get. But it's helping the food waste, which is good. On the other side
That's
of
a
it,
fun
there,
concept.
exactly, right. And another
Yeah.
concept is that I really like what they do is that they are developing sort of like, sensors that can be placed in like hotels and like the big kitchens. Basically, they, censor what are the, garbage is like going to waste, what are the, food products going to waste, and then they can just like determine what kind of products are going to waste. And then from there, they can actually help out, restaurants or like hotels to determine what are the menu items that they should actually omit, or look into the portion sizes, etc. Another one that they do, I'm not gonna stay on this too much maybe, but like I find them really, it's a great team. I mean, absolutely, they're great. But also like they developed this thing called it was like Sensati, I think. It also focuses on traceability and tracing and logistics as well. So they try to work on also the efficiency of the value chain of tracing where the food is being incoming, and how can we prevent any sort of like a waste happening along the way, because as you mentioned, distribution is a massive part on that as well. So they are looking each part of the food value chain, and they work with, like food banks, but it's also, big retail companies, and they work with hotels, and they work
Yeah.
on, both sides of it. So absolutely exciting team, and I'm just happy to hear that, see their logo in here as well. But yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, do you know if they're active outside of Turkey or they're still scaling up in Turkey?
Great question. I think they were part of the Metro Accelerator back in the day, but like not too long ago. But like I'm not sure. They're fully active in Turkey, that I know, and they are working
Yeah.
with like Metro already, which is a German company. It's a retail company,
Mhm.
but also based in Turkey, and they're working with
Yeah.
them for years and years and on. I'm pretty sure, as I know, the team members and the founders, I'm pretty sure they're looking into opportunities to expand, and maybe they already did. But I know that they are quite, involved in the food value chain in Turkey
Yeah.
overall, with like NGOs and other organizations. They're definitely looking into potentials of expansion for sure. They've been selected in various like impact focused programs, and had
Mhm.
talked about, etc. So probably one day we'll see them, outside as well.
Yeah, maybe for one of the next sessions, we can get someone from their team
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
tell us a little bit more about the, like the operational stuff.
Yeah,
Might be
absolutely.
interesting in the challenges that they're solving.
So
Might be interesting to put a little bit more context to it.
yeah, maybe. I mean, why not? I mean, food waste was something that was, asked us to talk about. So we can do a second session on that as well. Why not? That could be interesting. Yeah, I like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And next, I've looked at a distribution of food waste companies by age. And what I see is that food waste companies on average are 6 years old. And you can see that many of them are really younger. But of course, there are several that are really on the long tail. But what is really interesting is that just to put a little bit in context, why some of those companies are, or why investment might not have been as big. Like, just think about it. Only the like, if you pick a quick, an ultra fast delivery service like Gorillas, it was launched in March 2020, and it's already valued at 3.1 billion. So astronomical growth. Whereas if you pick a company like Appeal Sciences, which was launched, I believe, 2012, it's valued at just 2 billion. So what I've seen in general for the food tech ecosystem is that B2B solutions tend to scale slower, and many of the food waste companies are actually B2B solutions, right? So that might explain a little bit why some of them have been scaling a little bit slower, because of longer sales cycles, because when you sell to a business, you have multiple decision makers, and because of those things, it makes it less attractive to a certain extent to VCs as they're looking for companies that are high growth and can scale quickly. But if there are a couple of takeaways, there are three things I would like you to take from this presentation. So reducing CO2 emissions means eradicating food waste. So agriculture is big part, but food waste is a massive part of CO2 emissions as well. And if we want to go to net neutral, we need to do the right thing, and is eradicating food waste. And that's it. And that also helps actually to achieve the zero hunger United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, as we can redistribute all this food that is being wasted. But also it helps us it also helps us feed the growing population across the globe more efficiently. Overall, the food waste ecosystem is very early stage, and the potential going ahead is really massive. And I think we're just about to see the whole space really grow in terms of this investment, in terms of valuations, and in terms of really exciting solutions, because COVID actually has highlighted the need to have a really resilient food supply chain. And now governments who are looking at food security, but also corporations who want to know exactly where is the food across the value chain and want to make sure that they minimize environmental impact, they will start to really pay attention and to invest, or basically have food waste companies helping with food waste as their use their services, which I think would help the entire ecosystem scale and make the investment case for those startups more attractive. Before I finish, I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that all the data that was in this report is part of the food tech database, where we track more than 60K startups. This is an initiative with 5 Seasons Ventures and Dealroom. And also, we are publishing a weekly newsletter sent on Tuesday, where we are putting together a lot of data and a lot of interesting insights. And if you need one newsletter to make sure you're on top of all the news, all the funding rounds, make sure you subscribe and have a look also at the most comprehensive food tech database out there, foodtech.dealroom.co. Yeah. Any questions? Let me know.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And I think you should also mention, there's also, like in dealroom.co, there's also an existing ecosystem for the food waste. As you shared that you feature, but there they can also find all of that data in there as well.
Oh yeah, that's a great. We have basically what Semi is referring to is that to come up with the data, to curate the data on food waste. I've went through a lot of startups and then categorized whether they're food waste or not. And then I've put them on different categories. I'll make sure actually we include the link in YouTube, so whoever is watching can quickly find the link to the landscape. It's an interactive landscape with all the food waste companies by category. We update that. Dealroom updates that on a regular basis. The data is up to date. So some of the figures might change, but the most up to date data is in there.
Pretty cool data, to be honest, and it's also easy to access and understand, and I think that's that's also great. So let's dive in a way also based on all of the data. I really like that in this session you did a similar thing in the last one as well. You're connecting the two different sectors, but it's also along the way you're talking about how it's being also interconnected in a way. And food delivery is something that we covered in our last session. We can plug that in. Check out the other video if you're more interested on the delivery side of online groceries, etc. We also covered that in our first session, but it's also heavily related on the food waste as well, in a way, like the whole ecosystem. When you take a look at it, it's actually interconnected. And I was thinking we're talking about all of these efficiency focused startups as well, but this, I'm a big fan of biotech and agri-biotech, etc. And for example, like agri-biotech solutions that help extend shelf life of products. Adjacently, it's also a food waste startup, if you think about it, that has that impact. It's not directly, but it's indirectly.
It's Appeal Sciences. Actually, Appeal Sciences, that's what they do.
Well, exactly. Right. Exactly.
They extend the shelf life of vegetables by creating a layer around it to limit oxygen and to keep the moisture. So this is exactly what you mentioned. It's definitely part of food waste.
Exactly. And I would love to have your thoughts on it. So because you also mentioned that the investment is actually getting more and more investment ecosystem more and more interested in this space as well. And this wasn't like that before. Now there's a shift. Do you have any thoughts on how did it actually happen? Like, did we just realize like this is a major topic and VCs was like, yeah, we got to fix that, and then start investing in them? But it's also as you mentioned, there's also interest in governmental level. There's a lot of different entities looking into it because it's a major problem globally we are figuring out. And,
I think there are several things at play. So first, if you look back 5 years ago, maybe there were 1 or 2, 3 really food tech focused funds, right? With massive, with big enough funds. Right. That has changed a lot. So in the last couple of years, we have seen the emergence of a lot of food tech focused funds. Right. As LPs realized, hey, investing in primary production, distribution, and then consumption in the foods ecosystem is really important, and we need tech-enabled solutions. Right. So that is the first driver. They were not enough sector agnostic investors to look into the space,
Oh.
which basically meant that even if there were some promising solutions, they didn't receive enough backing.
Right.
And Appeal Sciences, as I mentioned, is dates before that. It's from 2012.
True.
But that's the second thing. The B2B solutions tend to scale slower, and that's the case with most of those food waste companies. That because they tend to scale slower, it makes it less attractive for investors, which in return makes the overall food waste ecosystem, let's say, less attractive. But what we've seen in the last couple of years, we can see that investment and interest, actually starting in 2015, interest has been picking up. And I think first, it's like also it coincidences with when impact startups really also started to pick up, and it's because everyone across the value chain, food value chain, is becoming more cautious about the environmental impact, and also governments are passing different regulations for reducing emissions along the way. So corporates are, and everyone across the value chain is incentivized to invest in those solutions, and adoption grows, which means then investor interest grows as revenues of those startups grow as well.
Yeah.
Another thing to mention, which is the way that, especially in primary production, it's in general related about adoption of tech-enabled solution in primary production. A lot of the farmers, especially small-scale farmers, they don't have the budgets to invest in those tech solutions to help them protect their crops and post-harvest, to help them limit food waste and etc. Right. But now there are new companies. Like I was looking at this company, Agrina. Basically, they're helping farmers to trade. It's like carbon trading, right? So basically, farmers are able. Sorry.
Where are they based? Is it?
I think they're Danish. But what really amazed me is that basically they're enabling farmers to create a certificate and then trade those emissions they save, which basically means it's creating a vehicle that helps farmers to invest in new technologies that help them to run their farms more efficiently, right? Beautiful. So as there are more governments, as governments encourage farmers and everyone across the value chain to also reduce their emissions, I think they would invest even more in food waste or prevention in general of food waste solutions, which would again increase the interest of investors and founders of this space.
100%. And I think that's, I 100% agree. And this chart shows that, it's like over the course of, 5 years and 6 years, and it's actually, short span, it just had this major spike along the way. And, this is definitely here to stay. It's not like, we're talking about like a food waste bubble, it's just something that we need to figure out. I mean, you can take out all of these technologies, but like we need to understand how we should do an efficient production. And I love that Danish startup, because reason why it's brilliant, because you're, as you mentioned, helping financially and helping their livelihood, but at the same time helping the production to be more efficient. And this is totally a different topic, of course, but maybe we can cover that if there's a demand on that. But like digital commodity and digital commodity exchanges and tokens with agriculture, etc. It's just really exciting stuff for me, because like agri-finance by its own, I think it's a massive topic, and it's with the number of startups existing, I think I would even say it's an untapped territory in a way, because there isn't much in there, but I mean it's a massive potential. But I mean, over with the food waste and as you showed this chart, this is a real list of real problems. So what's your thoughts on the future of it? Like, there's a momentum, there's like startups coming along, everybody's realizing we need to figure this out, but like how would you foresee like the next steps and like maybe the next investments, or what would make you excited in this topic to see, or if it's already there, how would you see that seeing in the field as well?
Yeah, I think I think in general, like the uh, the the companies that deal with prevention of food waste would have, um, I think, going forward, the biggest success. Because so far, I've looked actually at those numbers. It's funny you asked this question, but I've looked at exact those numbers several months ago. And what was the case is that redistribute was the largest category. So those are startups like Olio and others, which are helping neighbors sell excess food. But their business model is basically saying you are going to waste some food, and that's why you sell it, right? But I'm really a lot more excited about companies that reduce food waste across the supply chain. And it's funny that now that's actually the top category. So in the last couple of months, actually, I'm assuming a lot of companies in that category have received a lot of investment. So this is preventing is going to be, I would say, like the category that's really going to receive a lot of traction going forward, as it's helping directly everyone across the value chain to save those 2.6 trillion that I was talking about earlier.
Right.
But also about recycling, it's really exciting because there are companies that are creating something out of almost like out of nothing, or something that's about to get wasted. They're giving a new life to it, new purpose of it, and then creating economic value. So that's also quite interesting. And there are startups that help that in general make agriculture more sustainable by using food waste to create different agriculture products. So then again, companies that are recycling food waste are really making agriculture a lot more greener, which is one of the biggest polluters out there.
I think that's that. I think one of the the major aspects of this, and that's a great slide. And I was thinking the same thing when you were showing first time as well, is that the idea of how can we use the sources more efficiently, like because of the the global economic situation that we're all experiencing right now in a different manner, of course. But I mean, the idea of having inputs becoming more and more expensive along the way, that ergo making food more expensive, and ergo just impacting the whole food economy, is that I think that's the basic need on that. Like, we need to make inputs cheaper, but if we're using inputs, we need to make it more efficient. If we're using water, we need to make it more efficient because it's a limited resource, etc. So I think that's the whole perspective of approach to the food waste. Like, we need to figure out a way to prevent the waste before we even actually produce the thing. So
exactly.
Yeah. And that's
exactly.
really cool, man. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, and I think that's just also the hardest part. Like, if you have something, as a food waste, and you need to figure out, is it edible, is it not? If it's not edible, can we do this and this? It's like there are solutions, but it's also quite limited, and it's not like compared to this. I mean, this slide tells it all. Like, it's great, but it's not that effective and apparently it's not that scalable. And that's also the case. Like, if you're watching this, and if you're planning to do a food startup, or if you're working in the food waste industry, this is your cue. Like, you should focus more on reduce if you're looking into the investment side of things. And apparently there's more interest on that, and it just makes sense a lot.
Yeah, and I think going forward would have even more.
Exactly. Perfect. All right, I think we covered a lot, and there's a lot of data, and yeah, I mean, I think this is as a second session, as we talked about, with the food waste and all these exciting stuff happening. Anything you would like to add? Any cool stuff that you'd like to share as before we close off?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the discussion, and I would like to really remind everyone, make sure to join the Coke Project community on Slack, or just comment on the video, or just reach out to either Semi or I on LinkedIn, and just let us know what you're curious to explore, or whether you're interested to participate in any capacity. It's a friendly discussion. We like to explore food tech from different angles.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Same here, same here. And as Ivan mentioned, just join into our community and let us know what are the main topics you would like us to discuss, and we'll definitely look into it. And this is for us is just like it's quite exciting and talk about all of these exciting developments. And thank you for joining and watching us. And on our next session, which is going to be another Monday next month, as we do this in a monthly basis, and to our Food Tech Mondays. So we look forward to seeing you, and thank you so much for everyone joining in.